final part of today's show, I hope that we're going to have a little bit of fun because we're going to jump into the buy, sell, hold. As you all remember and should know, if for those who are new, buy, sell, hold is for subscribers only of the message board. They will put their submissions on the board, and I will bring them in, and I will answer buy, sell, or hold for whatever their submission is. Just a reminder to some of you, I had to rewrite some of the submissions because they were asked in question form, literally just a question. That's more of a mailbag thing. So it's more of a, here's the statement. Do you buy it? Do you sell it? Or you hold? It's not, will they do this on Saturday? That's a question. You're submitting the situation or the outcome or the scenario or whatever the case may be. And then I will then respond with whether I buy it, sell it, or hold it. So that's kind of how that works. Most of them are still that way, but a couple of you looked at it a little bit differently. And so I had to rewrite it a little bit. Just want to remind you guys for the future, and this is not a Q&A. That will be on Friday for the mailbag. All right. So if you do want to get something proposed or want me to respond to it and you aren't able to get your question, you weren't able to get your question on the board and you still want it to get up, or you're not a board member and you wanted to get up, go ahead and throw a super chat up there and we will respond to those. I do have a couple actually of those real fast. Let me get to real fast from Anthony Solomon. Thank you, Anthony. Thanks for the show, Bryan. You're most welcome. Iden Benami, IB getting me through jury duty in downtown Chicago. Come on. Oh, goodness gracious. I am sorry to hear that. I was on jury duty a couple years ago. It was a very interesting case, and I actually got nominated to be the foreman. I think I told you guys about that. And we had to decide and found a guy guilty, and had to basically knew he was going to get sent to jail. That was a very heavy feeling for sure, man. So I do not take that lightly, man. Appreciate you doing that. Nerd for life. Bryan, all I heard was OC uses motions to get mismatches. 1, is that not happening? 2, Riley not seeing it. 3, we're losing those matchups. It's more so 1 and 2. They're not doing it as much. They're just doing a lot of simple jet motions. We're not seeing quite as much of the motions being effective. The tight end motions are kind of giveaway-ish. You know, we're not seeing as much of that stuff, in my opinion, that we need to see. A lot of the things they're doing are just look a little telegraphed, and there's just not as much creativity with what they're doing motion-wise. They're going to have to fix that and adjust that. And then there's instances where they're using it, and it's serving its purpose, and the quarterback's just not getting the ball. There are times they're not winning the matchups, but that honestly has not been my biggest concern. The receivers are not my biggest concern right now. They're not playing great by any stretch of the imagination, but they're like not even top 2 or 3 of the issues that I'm seeing with this offense. They're going to have to figure that out. Beast in 88 with a super chat. Thank you very much. And Nerd for Life, thank you for your super chat. Beast in 88. I've been to the 04 Purdue game, 08 Syracuse, and 22 Stanford games. So Indy hasn't been kind to me. Thanks for the therapy sessions all week, BD. Indy kills me. Hey man, so are those I'm curious to hear from you. Are those aren't the only games you've been to, right? You've been to other games? Because if those are the only games you've been to, we might need to stop blaming Notre Dame for all this and look at you, man, because like there you go. Like I think that I kind of put the blame on myself. I was not drinking pop for a while. I started drinking pop, and all of a sudden Deuce Knight's looking around, and all of a sudden Notre Dame's not playing well. So I'm just saying, man, maybe it's us. Maybe it's us. I say jokingly, but no, it is frustrating, man. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes it's therapy for me too. I'll be straight with, okay, he's been to another 7 games beside. Okay, cool. So you've been to some others that they've won, so it's not you. I won't blame you. I'll just blame myself. But honestly, there's the first, like yesterday was definitely a therapy session. I was not going to jump in the post-game show on Saturday night, but then I just could not do it. And Sunday night was a good therapy session for me. Yesterday was a good therapy session. Today, I just didn't want to do the show, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I just was at the point now where it's like, I'm so done talking about this game that was played. I don't even have excitement for the game coming up because you just don't know what to expect from this football team. And you're just so disgusted with another year of what could have been and what should have been. Now, there's still tons of time to get things right. Tons of time to get things right. But it's frustrating. So I get it. But once you get going into the show, I'm glad I did it and all that type of stuff. But yeah, I'm with you, man. It can be frustrating. It can be very frustrating. So let's get to the buy, sell, hold. We're going to start off with ND Tommy. It says buy, sell, or hold. Notre Dame leans on fundamentals, blocking, tackling, running, love, price, and kicking game. Somehow, Steve Angeli gets his shot and leads the Irish to a come from behind 21-17 victory. Well, I'm going to sell that. And I'm not going to sell that because I don't think Steve Angeli can lead them to a 21-17 victory. What I'm selling is if they lean on fundamentals, blocking, tackling, and running love and price, they should not need a 21-17 come from behind victory. It should not be that close. So I could see them leaning on fundamentals, blocking, tackling, running love and price. I could see Steve Angeli getting his shot if Riley Leonard's injured. But if those things all happen at the beginning of that, before the Angeli part, and they need a come from behind victory, it means Angeli played really poorly. And I don't know that that's necessarily what I would see happening against this secondary, but I just don't know that the first one and the second one go together. If the first one happens and they play well, then I don't think it'll be a come from behind victory, if that makes sense. So that's why I'm selling that one. But the first part of it, I would buy that they're going to lean on fundamentals, blocking, tackling, running love and price, and kicking game. Yes, I absolutely see that. That's another thing we haven't talked about. I really hope that what happened Saturday has not gotten into Mitch Jeter's head, because he had two missed kicks. I think they were both blocked, and he's been a money kicker, and sometimes things like that can really get in a guy's head, and I hope that doesn't happen to him. I am Tenzin. Notre Dame bounces back. Buy, so hold. Notre Dame bounces back in a big way against Purdue, but will underestimate their second MAC team next game and struggle again. I'll say this. Listen. If they bounce back against Purdue, I have no concern at all about Miami of Ohio. That's kind of where I'm at. I just, after losing to Northern Illinois, I don't see how this team, so I'm selling this. I don't see how this team goes out the next week. Let's say they, like, to your buy, so hold, they come out this week and they bounce back in a big way. There's no way in heck, in my opinion, this team is that immature that they're going to then go out and say, well, okay, we're good now because we bounced back against Purdue, so we can now go take on a MAC team that was even better than Northern Illinois, and we're going to be fine. If this happens, so I'm selling this, but if your submission comes true and my sell is wrong and it should have been a buy, this is going to be a long year, because that tells me this is an incredibly immature football team. I don't think they're that immature. I think if they bounce back against Purdue, they will also be really good against Miami of Ohio. I do. I don't see how they bounce back against one and then go back to what they were 2 weeks ago. Games like Northern Illinois change you. Now, what we don't know is how it changes you. Does it change you to where now you're just a shook football team that never recovers? Or does it shake you because, from the standpoint of, you're now a pissed off football team and you're going to stay that way? Because that's really what it comes down to for me. And if it doesn't change you and you immediately go back to what you were, then you're an immature football team with crap leadership. That's not a very poor leadership. That's how I see it. It would shock me if that's what happens. I could see them struggling against Miami of Ohio, but I think if they struggle against Miami of Ohio, most likely they also struggle against Purdue. That's how I see it. KJ Fergie, buy, sell, hold. Freeman and staff will eventually learn to use creative ways to use their best playmakers on offense and stop rotating out our best players at critical moments in the game. Well, look, there's certain instances I'm okay with them rotating certain guys out. You know, if you've got playmakers at certain spots and you need to get a pass pro guy in there, I understand that, but maybe go like 21 in that situation, or, you know, different types of things. It's not so much that, but then they take him off the field and then they give the other guys the ball. You know what I mean? If you want to put Devin Ford in the game, fine, but you can't have Devin Ford in the game and Jeremiah Love in the game. Like that was kind of my concern and what I didn't quite understand about some of those final drives and why they didn't get those guys the football. It just it was puzzling. So to a degree, I don't necessarily agree with the premise entirely, although we saw enough of that for it to be viewed as a problem. Will they eventually learn? To use? Sure, they'll eventually learn it. So I'll buy it to eventually learn it. I don't know that it's going to be this weekend, but I think they'll eventually figure it out, or they'll be fired. And that's really what it comes down to. Brian Kelly's family, Notre Dame, buys a hold. Notre Dame's offensive line and defensive lines control the line of scrimmage and run and pass versus Purdue. I'm going to sell that just because I haven't seen this offensive or defensive line control much of anything so far with any kind of consistency. They've had their moments, especially the D line against A&M. They were good. They weren't great. They were good, but they got whooped in the trenches on both sides of the ball by Northern Illinois. And I think Purdue's probably as good, if not better, than Northern Illinois on the defensive line, and not as experienced, but more talented than what Northern Illinois was in the offensive line. So I'm going to sell that. And now, is it possible they do this? Of course. But in a lot of different areas, I am 100% in show me mode. Do I think Riley Leonard can still be a dynamic impact quarterback? Absolutely. Am I predicting it? Not until he shows it to me. I mean, I got to see it, right? Because he's not wearing a Duke uniform anymore. He's wearing a Notre Dame uniform. He's got to show me he can do it at Notre Dame. You know, Mike Demrock's going to show me that he can get this thing fixed. Al Golden's got to show me he can find some fixes in the run game. I'm less concerned about that one, but you know, everything. Riley Mills, Howard Cross, everybody's got to show me now. Outside of Xavier Watts and Jeremiah Love, I mean, everybody's got something to show me. And so it's possible, but I'm not predicting it until they show it to me with some level of consistency. AFMOS. I'd be very curious to know what that means. So if you could put that either in the chat or if you're not listening live, if you could put that on the message board, I'd be very curious to know what that means. CJ, buy, sell, hold. CJ and Kenny don't see any meaningful minutes playing time for the remainder of the 24 season. Perhaps Kenny gets in for a couple of minutes to hand off and pass once or twice when we are up 3 scores in the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter. Sadly, I'm buying this. And I don't like the fact that it's a buy, but barring injury, I don't think that we're going to see CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey in any meaningful snaps. I don't. Explain this to me. How do I predict? How do I say otherwise? For a head coach who is so incredibly petrified of making a mistake that he goes out and gets a quarterback like Riley Leonard, then says, let's reprogram Riley Leonard and put him in this offense and not have him do this, not have him do that. Don't be a playmaker. Don't be spectacular. Just do exactly what we tell you to do. That coach is then going to go put 2 unproven players in the game. I mean, I watched CJ Carr be the best quarterback on the field in the Jersey scrimmage, and I watched CJ Carr be the best quarterback on the field in the blue gold game, and I watched CJ Carr throw the ball better than anybody else on the roster, and then I got to watch CJ Carr remain as the number 4 quarterback in the depth chart. Why? Here's a direct quote. Well, they got to do it against somebody better than the third team. Well, you can't do it against somebody better than the third team if you don't get snaps against somebody better than the third team. You know, so and somebody says, I think that was just word salad right before kickoff. Don't think that was a real thing. The problem with that premise is that's exactly how the game played out, and that's the similar comment that Marcus Freeman has made over and over again. So you can convince yourself that was just a word salad, but that's exactly how the game played out. It's exactly how the game played out. Because they're not creating things that give – their protections are not designed to create running lanes for a quarterback that's mobile. They are set for a quarterback to sit in the pocket. And that doesn't make any sense. So I think that's just kind of coping, honestly, that there's no way it can be that bad. There's no way they can be that dumb. And I understand that. But that's what we've seen, unfortunately. Because even the running that Riley Leonard has done, it's all been it's all within the structure of the offense, primarily. Like he's had, 1 scramble that was effective against A&M? Everything else he's done as a runner, as an impact guy, has been on designed runs. So that's running the offense. So I just don't see how that guy turns the reins over to CJ Carr or Kenny Minchey. I hope I'm wrong. Really hope I'm wrong. If Riley Leonard can't go, I hope that eventually one of those 2 guys plays quarterback. But I don't see that being the case. I think they're just going to put Steve Angeli in at that point in time and hand the ball off and take the occasional one-on-one shot and throw a bunch of checkdowns and easy throws. And I mean, he had a deep ball to a wide open receiver. It's a good read. Found a guy, hit him. and one shot outside, and everything else they had with him was hitches, crossers, checkdowns, right? It's a very conservative game plan, which I understand, right? It's exactly what I understand. And so with a redshirt freshman making his first start, but that's just kind of what they are doing now. They're not taking shots down the field. They're not doing things. They're not giving their and understand what I'm saying here. What Freeman's doing. It's programming, y'all. I don't know how many times I can say this. I've explained. It's not Marcus Freeman in Mike Denbrock's ears saying, "Hey, call this, call that, do this, do that." It's not him saying, "Hey, Mike, we're going to go out there and run the ball all day." It's programming. It's mental programming, right? I mean, look, guys, we're a country that has perfected that, right? I mean, I'm not going to get into conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's been open. It's been admitted. But there's some programs the CIA did. I don't even want to say them because it might get me demonetized. Back in the 50s and 60s about mind control. Mental programming is a part of sports. And when you have programmed a kid to don't make mistakes, do exactly what we say, do exactly what we say, do exactly what we say. Guess what? Eventually he's going to be like, yeah, I'm not quite sure what I should do, or normally I would run, but am I supposed to do that now? And the freelancing thing that is there is gone, and what we get into now is this guy that is afraid to make a mistake. Riley Leonard was not that kind of quarterback at Duke. Why is he now? Okay, that's the thing we got to ask ourselves. Why is a guy that was a freelance, go make plays, kind of street ball type of quarterback the last 2 years now, and this is before he hurt his shoulder and all, why is that there now? That's what you have to ask yourselves. And so that was an issue under Brian Kelly. I criticized Brian Kelly for it because he had a similar philosophy. And just because I like Marcus Freeman a lot as a person and do think he's got a lot of tools to be successful, I'm not going to give him a pass when we're seeing the exact same thing. And it's not like a young guy that came up that maybe we just misevaluated him. We're talking about a guy that went out and made those type of freelance plays to beat Duke last year, almost beat Notre Dame with those last year. And there's all those different aspects of it. And now he can't do that against Northern Illinois. I don't buy that. And so when it's kind of like this, when someone tells you who they are, believe them until they give you a reason not to. And, you have the guy in Sam Hartman that throws for 38 to 4,000 yards a year, comes to Notre Dame and is 1,000 yards under what he'd been doing in previous years. Why? Think about this. Who's the one quarterback in the last 3 years that you would argue they got the most out of his talent? It's Drew Pyne. Why? Because Drew Pyne is exactly that type of quarterback. Just do what we tell you to do. And that's why Drew Pyne probably went on the most successful run as a starting quarterback that we've seen, as far as beating good teams and consistency and that type of stuff outside of Stanford. I mean, think about that. Why is that? Why is Drew Pyne the guy that probably ran your offense the best in the last 2 years? Not Sam Hartman, not Riley Leonard, because he is exactly what you want. He is a robot. And, you can't say, well, look, we'll have him be this, but then we'll also take the playmaking. No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to accept some of the other stuff and then hand them with the playmaking. Ian Book never played for Marcus Freeman. We're talking about Marcus Freeman. So that's kind of where I'm going at it. So, and just a response, I know that stuff is declassified, but there's a lot of things that are known that YouTube still demonetizes you for. There's a lot of things that are now admitted as truth from, 4 years ago that if you talk about it now, you still get demonetized. So just because it's declassified doesn't mean that I'm not going to get dinged because I mentioned it on this podcast. So that's why I'm not going to say it, because I don't know what they will or won't hammer me for and stop, promoting us and that kind of stuff. So just letting you guys know that a little bit. That's why I don't want to say it. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at. So that's why I'm a sell on that. Now, here's the thing. Everything I just said, I hope that I am proven dead wrong starting this weekend. Dead wrong. I would love to be wrong about this. Would love to be wrong about this. And I hope that eventually they either A, change, or B, we find out that maybe there's a little bit more at play here than we think. This is ultimately what they want to get to, and then they eventually get to that. That's also, we also have to be to be open-minded enough to say maybe there's a reason why they're holding back right now. Maybe there was an injury we didn't know about. I'm not talking about Riley getting hurt in the game. I'm talking about maybe some other things. Maybe there's something that's been happening. Maybe there's something going on that we don't know about, and we have to be willing to admit that as a possibility, that eventually they want to get there. That also is possible, right? But again, we just saw Notre Dame lose to Northern Illinois, folks. I can't think of a single scenario in which this is true. You should have had any 4 of your starting quarterbacks be able to beat Northern Illinois, and it didn't happen, right? Like that's kind of where the disappointment lies. I don't know. Watch that. I don't know what that is. Was it Lilo Galante? I don't know what that is. So send me a link or something. I'm not sure what that is. I watch a lot of true crime stuff and everything like that. So I don't know what that is. DCLTJ. By so hold, Sean Sevillano will work his way into the D-line rotation in time to be a consideration for the freshman All-American team after shoring up the run defense. Man, I'd love it if this was a buy. I would say if this happens with Ardmo Mookum or Sean Sevillano or somebody like that, that'd be great. Would be great. I would love that. I don't know that that'll happen, but I would love that. They need to add. I'm a fan of having some beef up the middle. I just don't think it's the only way to be successful. What I do believe is if you're not going to have beef up the middle, you need to play to that. If you're going to be a quote unquote undersized, you need to play to that. And so hopefully, I would actually hope that it would actually be Ardmo Mookum, because I think he's more of a disruptor. I think Sean Sevillano is just more of a space eater, which is fine. But I want to see that be the case. We do have a buy so hold. AST12321, a super chat. Thank you very much. Buy so hold. Steve Angeli will start every game next season. I'm selling that just for my sanity. But no, I don't think that's the case. Based on things that I've been told, I don't think that'll be the case. But at this point in time, anything is possible. But I'm gonna sell that. Unless I'm just being lied to, which is, I guess, possible, I'm gonna sell that. Aiden Benami, buy so hold. Football and any sport for that matter is a game of knowledge, but also feel and gut. You hope Marcus Freeman goes with those and not some Anthony kid. Like, look, let's stop blaming Anthony Tresh for this, right? Because Anthony Tresh is just doing his job. The issue is not him. The issue is the position that Marcus Freeman put him in. And so, yes, football is knowledge. It's about feel and it's about gut. But your feeling and your gut needs to be driven by data and experience. Or like that's the thing, is like gut isn't just like, okay, in my head, I just feel like we should call this play that we've never practiced or never run. No, it's in my gut. This is what works for us. And in this situation, man, I just feel like this is what they're going to do. I think they're going to run this particular play in this situation. Why? Not because of my gut, just randomly, and I never saw anything. I've never watched any film, but my gut tells me this. No, my preparation leads me to believe that this is what they're going to do. You've got a knowledge of your football team and the situations and all that kind of stuff. So, I look at it and say, yeah, I want him to go more with feel and gut based on knowledge and breaking down the opponent. There is a time and a place for data. There is a time and a place for, and that's always been true. Every coach in America that I've ever known, and certainly everyone that I've ever coached with, has on his play sheet a go for two chart. And that's kind of analytics, like, hey, when you're up this amount, you go for it, right? I mean, those are all things. There's nothing wrong with analytics. Analytics is a good thing, but if it's used properly. Analytics could have helped baseball if used properly. The problem is baseball dove too hard into analytics and, in my opinion, ruined the game. And I hope that football doesn't do that. In basketball, analytics, in my opinion, in a lot of ways, has ruined the game. And it's just not it was starting to be fun again as they shot more threes, and now they've kind of leaned too hard into that. And you can't have a 7-footer. And I literally have seen this. Well, this guy's 7 foot, but I don't know if they're going to, he's going to get drafted, this, that, and the other, because he doesn't shoot well enough. And I'm thinking, what the heck? He's 7 feet tall. Whatever happened to rebounding and defense and blocking shots? Well, that's not as valued as it used to be. Okay, that's fine. But I think that's kind of ruined the game. And I hope football doesn't fall into that same trap. And there's a time and a place for analytics. And when that time is right, then lean on that kid. But like what happened Saturday is not his fault. It's on Coach Freeman. He's the one that gives people the ability to speak to him in those type of situations or ask. He turned around and asked the kid. From what I saw. So that's not on Anthony. That's on the head football coach. By so hold, we've had our QB hurt over 75% of the time over the last 10 to 15 years or so. You mentioned this summer. Over 75%? No. No, I sell that. Yeah, I sell that. Yeah. I'm trying. No, over 70. No, not that I can think of. And you had years where like you had a quarterback hurt for a long time. Maybe that 75, I still think is too high. But we'll have to see. All right. Got more from Ida and Benami. By so hold, Marcus Freeman will learn from not taking an opponent seriously. And unfortunate as it is, he will be better for this. I'm going to buy it out of hope. But shouldn't we have learned that lesson against Marshall or Stanford or Navy 2022 or Clemson last year? I mean, did we really need to learn that lesson against Northern Illinois? I don't think so. So I'm going to buy it out of hope. I hope that this is the thing that finally gets them to realize, hey, we have to have more consistency from a preparation standpoint, physically and mentally. Louisville, Joe Allen said Louisville and Clemson. I agree with you about Clemson. I don't agree about Louisville. I don't think Notre Dame overlooked Louisville. I just think that team was beat mentally going into that game. I don't think it was that they necessarily overlooked them as much. You could argue that they overlooked Duke a little bit, but I don't think Louisville is a team that they overlooked. I could be wrong, but that was just my read of that situation. All right. Yeah, I think there was a preparation problem against Louisville. There was a mental focus problem. I don't think it was a not taking them seriously. So they played terrible. I just think they played terrible for different reasons. That's all I'm saying. Bisa holds Steve Angeli will lead Notre Dame to an 11-1 regular season due to a Riley Leonard injury. Sell. I think Steve Angeli's a fine quarterback. He's a fine, he's a better version he's better than Drew Pine. He's got better skills than Drew Pine. But if let's just say, because we're assuming now we're talking about that, if he takes over for this weekend's game, no, I don't think that they go 11-1 the rest of the way. 10-2, maybe 9-3, maybe. I'd say maybe 10-2 would be more likely, because one of the games they would have lost with him at quarterback, like they wouldn't have beat Texas A&M without Riley Leonard. And I don't think people are putting enough on for all the issues you have with Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard has bailed the offensive line out of at least 4 or 5 sacks so far this year. Steve Angeli will not do that, and that's not neither will Kenny Minchie, neither will CJ Carr. That's no. Steve's a nice kid. You can go 10-2 with Steve Angeli if you want to compete for a championship and run the table the rest of the way. I don't know that he can do that. Guys, I would truly love to be wrong. I know some of you get so upset whenever I don't say Steve Angeli's the next Joe Montana. I get that. I hope I'm wrong about Steve Angeli, but I've got to give you my honest opinion, right? Do you guys want me to lie to you, or do you want me to give you my honest opinion? I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm as wrong on Steve Angeli as I was about Kyron Williams. I do. But I just haven't seen it. I didn't see it. I mean, if you really study the bowl game like a coach, you'd see things my way. I'm confident of that. If you saw practices that we saw, you'd feel the same way that I do. I truly believe that. He's a nice quarterback. And I've said in the past, I could see a scenario in a couple of years where CJ Carr, Steve Angeli, and Kenny Minchie are all Power 5 starting quarterbacks, just at different schools. I think Steve Angeli is a fine Power 5, Power 4 quarterback, just not at a place like Notre Dame that's trying to win championships. He just isn't. But I'll tell you, if Steve proves me wrong over the long haul, not plays well in a game or two, but if he proves me wrong, I would love that. And I will come here and admit that I was wrong with a smile on my face, because I think he's a great kid. I've heard nothing but great things about him as a leader and as a teammate and as a worker. All those things are true. I don't see it with him with the skill set. I didn't see it in high school, and I haven't seen it now. Right? And I'm not going on. It's not just about practice, though. Some people say he's a gamer. Okay, fine, but even in games, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The stuff we see in practice is what we see in games, and that's kind of where I'm at. And Tony Gilbert, I hope you're right. I truly do. And any Notre Dame kid that plays that I don't think is very good, I always want him to prove me wrong. Because Notre Dame being good is far more important to me than me being right. I hate being right when I don't think a kid can play, because it means it's not good for Notre Dame. So that's truth, absolute truth. Ida Benami, can Texas State beat Arizona State Thursday night? Bro, I just watched Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame. So anything is possible. Anything is possible. I can't tell you the answer to that question because I know Texas State's looked pretty good in their first two games. They played UTSA. I think they blew UTSA out last weekend. They lost a lot this offseason. They lost a lot of talent this offseason. Can they go out and is GJ Kinney is he the head coach at Texas State, right? I know they got the James Madison quarterback this offseason. So, I mean, they got some. I just haven't watched them play. So I couldn't tell you for sure what they can or can't do. But I do know statistically they look pretty darn good the first two games. And, I don't know what Arizona State did. We'll see what the Sun Devils do. They beat Mississippi State. That's a good win for them. They blew out Wyoming and beat Mississippi State. They got to go to Texas State. I don't know why the heck they would schedule that game. Can they? Sure, I'll buy that. They can. Just as long as you guys understand, I haven't watched any film of Texas State this year. So just keep that in mind. All right. Vice a hold. The Gamecocks will beat LSU this weekend. Sell. Look, can they? Again, I just watched Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame. Can they? I watched LSU in Brian Kelly's first year get whooped on the road by a 5-6, 4-7 Texas A&M team. Sure, it can happen. I'm not going to predict that it's going to happen. Although I'll tell you what, I would have told you the same thing going into last week, and I would have told you absolutely no way is South Carolina going to go on the road and beat Kentucky. No freaking way is that going to happen. I'd have been like, dude, you're seriously predicting Iden for South Carolina to beat Kentucky on the road? Did you not watch South Carolina barely beat Old Dominion? Did you not see that? And that's what I would have said. But you know what happened? South Carolina went out this weekend and not only beat Kentucky, beat the crap out of Kentucky. Beat the absolute crap out of Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky got to 100 yards passing. I'm actually going to look that box score up again. They didn't get to 100 yards passing. They had 44 yards passing and only 139 yards rushing. Like, that is not good. That is just downright terrible. The problem that I see it is, though, they won 31-6, but that was more about, I thought Kentucky played really poorly, but they had some short fields. I mean, their last touchdown was a pick six. They had a 58-yard touchdown drive, a nice 61-yard touchdown drive, a 43-yard touchdown drive because of turnovers and short fields. LSU's defense isn't very good, but LSU's offense is still good. And I have a hard time seeing South Carolina, even at home, winning that game. I'll be rooting for them, but I just don't see it. I think LSU will win that game. And again, that's another one that I hope to be wrong about. Would love to be wrong about that. But yeah, I mean, but right now, with the way the season's gone, man, I don't put anything past anybody. If you'd have told me last Wednesday, if you'd have come into Bice Hold and you'd have said, hey, Bice Hold, Northern Illinois is going to beat Notre Dame in the trenches and win that game, I'd have been like, dude, what are you on? You are nuts. Yes, this is a good football team, and I know I told you that this is a well-coached team, and there's no way they're going to come into Notre Dame Stadium and manhandle Notre Dame in the trenches. No way. And now you're picking Kentucky or South Carolina to beat Kentucky on the road? What are you talking about, dude? Where's your head at? And then you'd have come back on Monday and be like, hey, Bryan, remember when you told me I was nuts for those two things last week? Well, they came true. So when those things are happening, man, I'm not putting anything past anything right now at this point in time. I said this is going to be a crazy year. And it's certainly been that so far. It has certainly been that so far. Because that's exactly what both of those things would happen this weekend, man. And so we'll see. I hope it's true, but I don't know. Dano, Bice Hold, Notre Dame will have to have a run-heavy game plan versus Purdue. That would concern me a little bit. That would concern me a little bit. Yeah. I don't know that Notre Dame can come out and run all over Purdue. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see that. I don't see that. I think they're going to have to be balanced, and they're going to have to find ways to throw the football. Going to absolutely have to find ways to throw the football. So I hope you're correct. 13 Reasons Why says that, or by Hold, Texas overtakes Georgia as number one after this weekend. So Texas plays UTSA, and Georgia plays at Kentucky. A week ago at this time, I would have said that's possible. I could see Georgia kind of overlooking Kentucky to, kind of get ready for that next game against Alabama here in 2 weeks. But the way Kentucky played last week, even if Georgia overlooks Kentucky, I don't know how. I mean, they're going to overcome them. So no, I don't see. I think Georgia getting a road win over Kentucky is going to mean more than Texas A&M. Texas getting a home win over UTSA. So I'm going to say no, that they do not take them over number one. Somebody just said, talking about an upset, Michigan getting upset this weekend. I don't see it. I don't see that as an upset. Wasn't Texas favored to win that? Texas was ranked higher and favored to win. So there was nothing about Michigan losing as an upset. They were the underdog. And it was the final score is 31-12. I predicted 30-13. That's pretty much how that game. I wish the Notre Dame game would have gone how I predicted it, but that one pretty much went how I thought it was going to go. Greg Nielsen, if Josh Burnham has to miss time due to an injury, Junior Tuilamaka can give Notre Dame effective reps at the defensive end position. I think he can. I don't know that he'd be the answer there because he plays Viper right now, and it would require a move. If Josh Burnham can't play, though, they're going to have to figure something out, and I think Junior might be a good option because, man, I don't see how that one happens. I don't see how that one happens because, I don't see it. I mean, you just can't go to the game saying, hey, we're just going to give all the Burnham's reps to RJ Oben because he hasn't played well enough to do that. Maybe this is a weekend to give Bryce Young more reps, maybe. So that's kind of where I'm at. So yeah, I don't think that's going to be, something that I see. Yeah. So Chief Brody says, Bryan, I'm talking about Michigan losing this coming weekend, not the game. I gotcha. I don't see that happening. I mean, Arkansas State, I would love to see it, but Arkansas State barely beat Central Arkansas and barely beat Tulsa. I don't see that happening, but I would love it if it did. Absolutely love it if it did. So, but I'd sell that one too. So I'm going to sell this one as, or I'm going to buy this that he can give them effective reps, but I just don't know that he will. Richard III, buys a hold. If this team misses the playoffs, Coach Freeman will be able to retain most of the current roster, i.e. not lose important players to the portal. Yeah, I would imagine. I don't see a bunch. I mean, look, here's the thing about players and recruits, and I've said this 1,000 times, they do not jump ship the way that fans do or react the way that fans do after wins or losses, and that's a good thing. They're not fanatics. Most of these kids didn't grow up Notre Dame fans. Most of the coaches didn't grow up Notre Dame fans, and that's perfectly okay. That's why recruits don't decommit after every loss, even though fans think that they will. Notre Dame's recruits handled the loss a lot better than a lot of members of Irish Breakdown who, before the game was even over, were canceling their membership as if like this is somehow my fault that Notre Dame played the way they did this weekend, or somehow I should have seen that Notre Dame was going to come lay an egg against Northern Illinois, and so you're going to cancel your membership because you're mad at the team or mad at me or whatever. The same 18 to 21-year-olds that you're booing are going to handle the loss way better than you will, and they're not going to jump in the portal and leave and all those type of things. So usually they don't react that way. Now, if they go out, if the season goes out and you get into a situation where the season falls apart, then I could see that but it wouldn't be because they missed the playoff. It would be because the season fell apart and the program's in a little bit in shambles. But just missing the play, if they go 10-2 this year and miss the playoff, you're not going to see guys leave because of that. You'll see same guys leave that would have left otherwise. So if they lose some players in the portal, it won't be because of that. It'll be because they got big offers or because they're not playing. That would be why. Bayside Tiger 6 buys a hold. Marcus Freeman has to trust the version of himself that got him here versus trying to be like Tressel, other coaches. Yeah, see, I'm selling that because it's we always said, oh, he's playing Tressel ball. Well, I mean, Tressel ball worked. It worked for Ohio State. I mean, the guy won a national title, played for the national title another year, was consistently in the top 10. I don't remember Jim Tressel losing to a MAC team, right? So, I mean, if he was playing Tressel ball, Notre Dame would have won on Saturday. This isn't about that. And just because Jim Tressel's a mentor, hey, guys, if I was the head coach at Notre Dame, I'd have Jim Tressel come speak to my football team as well. He's a Midwestern legend with what? I mean, if Jim Tressel's speaking to your football team, he's going to be able to hold up his 4 fingers like this and have national championships on each finger and say, guess what? I don't have enough room for all my championship rings. Let me have to bring up this other finger. Guy won 5 national championships, 4 at the 1AA level. He won 4 in 8 years. 7 years, excuse me. And lost the championship game 2 other times, goes to Ohio State, wins the national title in 2002, beats one of a great Miami team. And from 2002 to 2010, before he got fired, finished inside the top 10 all but 1 season. I mean, the guy was a great coach. If he was my mentor, I would absolutely have him come speak to my football team. I would have Lou Holtz come speak to my football team. It's good to have mentors. It's good to take lessons from your mentors. And so I think that we've pushed back too hard on this. However, the lessons you learn have to build you into being who you are. And so when you make decisions, you don't ask yourself, what would Jim have done? What would Lou have done? What would Jesus do on this particular play? It's, okay, this is what I think is best for my football team. It's like, you'll see this all the time, especially at the lower levels, but you'll go to these camps, or I'll go to these clinics when I was coaching, and I'd sit there with like other coaches that I coached, in our league, and we'd be listening to this offensive coach talk, and I'd get some things from it. And I said, okay, well, I like that concept. How do we fit that into our personnel? Okay, they run a 20-yard corner route. We can't run a 20-yard corner route because we can't protect that long. Our receivers run 4.7s, not 4.4s, and our quarterback can't make that throw. Okay, so fine. So we'll run it this way. And you've got to alter it that way. You've always got to build it to what you do. And I don't think Marcus Freeman is doing certain things because that's how Jim Tressel did it. I think Marcus Freeman has a philosophy of football that is similar to what Jim Tressel did. The problem is there's not enough conviction to lean into that. If you want to be Jim Tressel, then you need to lean into that. And what frustrates me is you hire coaches to run a certain type of thing, you recruit players to run a certain type of thing, and then you program them mentally to be so afraid to make a mistake that they can't play that system. And that's a bigger issue for me. But at the same time, your offensive coordinator also has to do a better job, just like your defense needs to do a better job. So I'm totally fine with Marcus Freeman looking up to Jim Tressel. I would if I was him and played for him. The Tressel ball thing, they don't play anything like Ohio State did on offense in the 2000s. It has nothing to do with that. And there's other teams that win running the football. There needs to be other answers for this, not just the oh, well, he's trying to be like Tressel. Well, I wish he was like Tressel, because if he was like Tressel, Notre Dame would never lose to MAC teams. They would have a national championship already. And, because Jim Tressel won a title in year 2, and they'd be a top 10 team every single year. Which is exactly what Jim Tressel did. So, it's an easy way to take a shot at Freeman. And that's fine, but that's not the problem. The problem isn't that he's trying to be like Jim Tressel. The problem is that if he's going to be like that, you've got to go in other ways. His issue has more to do with him being a defensive coordinator than him looking up to Jim Tressel. That's the problem. I don't think the way he runs the offense or the way he programs players to never make mistakes is because of what Jim Tressel did. It's because he's a defensive guy, and that's what defensive guys like to do. Don't make a mistake, offense. Don't screw up, offense. Don't put us in a short field, offense. Don't turn the ball over, offense. Take a longer time on this drive, offense. We need time to talk, offense. That's where it comes from. It comes from him being a really, really good middle linebacker in college and a really good defensive coordinator. I think it has more to do with that than him looking up to Jim Tressel or looking up to Lou Holtz or any of those other things. Those are things that Coach Freeman's going to have to adapt on. Not so much, hey, stop listening to a guy that has 5 national championships. Stop listening to a guy whose team all but 1 year down the last, was this 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a 10-year stretch at Ohio State, right? Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In a 9-year stretch at Ohio State, won a national title, finished in the top 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other times, and finished in the top 10 one other time. Only had one finish outside the top 10, and that was a year where they went 8-4. Like, I would gladly take that because you've already got the 8-4 out of the way. I would gladly take that. Okay, be like Jim Tressel because that means you're going to win a championship. And remember, when Jim Tressel won his national title in 2002, it had been over 30 years since Ohio State won a national championship. So he didn't inherit a team that was winning championships all the time like Urban Meyer did. He inherited a program that was getting their butts kicked consistently by Michigan and hadn't won a national championship in over 30 years. Over 30 years. Well, Tressel never played in the playoffs either, though. 4 of Jim Tressel's national titles literally came in a 16-team playoff. Right? I mean, dude. Yeah, Jim Tressel knew what a playoff was like. I mean, guys, he beat a Miami team that some people think is one of the greatest teams ever. He won 4 championships in a playoff. Yeah, Jim Tressel knows how to win in a playoff. That's literally what his entire career was built on leading up to Ohio State. Go and look at his resume. NCAA Division I-A first round, NCAA Division I-AA second round, first round, 1AA championship in a game, the year they had to play 15 games. You want to ask, hey, Coach Tressel, how do you prepare a team to play a 15, 16-game season? He's going to have a lot more knowledge about that than any other coach is out there. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's not harder on Marcus Freeman now. It's not even at all harder. Jim Tressel knows what it's like to have to win 4 or 5 playoff games to win a national championship. He absolutely knows what that's like. Absolutely knows what that's like. They had to win a national championship when he was coaching. You had to win 4 games. And here's something else, because I coached in the playoffs. You don't get time at that level. You don't get a month to prepare for that game. It's the next weekend. So he absolutely knows what it's like to win at that level. He absolutely is someone you should look up to. Absolutely, he's someone he should look up to. And what's going on with Marcus Freeman now is not because he has Jim Tressel as a mentor. That is a lazy social media take. His problems are because he's a defensive coordinator that tries to run his entire program like he's running a defense and doesn't understand in today's game, you have to let the offense eat a little bit. That's the problem. You have to be willing to allow some mistakes in order to be successful and to be the kind of elite offense you need to be. That's the issue. That's not because anything related to Jim Tressel. It's because of him being a defensive coordinator. And, just there's nothing I dislike more than just like those takes that everybody jumps onto. And I'm not talking about Bayside Tiger as much as just some of the other responses. It's well, everyone on Twitter's jumping on to this is the problem, so let me jump on and say this is the problem so that we can all be saying the same thing. So Marcus Freeman should absolutely take advice from guys like Jim Tressel who have been there and done that. They've had tough seasons. They've had tough losses. They've had times when they lost a quarterback got hurt, done all that. Of course they should lean on that. Should he not talk to Lou Holtz? Should he not take advice from Lou Holtz, which he does? Of course he does. That's the issue. And that's what he's got to fix. And as I've said before in response to, I'm not saying I've said this, I don't know how many more times I can say this. He's not on his headset telling Mike Denbrock what to run. It's an overall attitude. It's a demeanor. It's how you prepare. It's don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up that can get in your quarterback's head, can get in your receivers' heads. It makes guys more methodical. You're asking them to do more things than they should be doing, then they don't do it fast. There's all types of things that go in here beyond just the easy of, hey, run this here, run that there. That's not what I'm talking about. I've never said that he's doing that. Matter of fact, he doesn't do that from anything I've ever been told outside of the normal situations that you always talk to your head coach. It's 4th down. Hey, what are we doing here? Or 3rd down? Are we playing for a field goal here? Can I take a shot in the end zone? Head coaches always do that kind of stuff. Always. So that's kind of where it comes from. It's that part of how you prepare your team on a day-to-day basis. Domer Grizz, buy, sell, hold. I know you said 21 personnel could help, but buy, sell, hold, playing more 12 personnel would be an effective way to get the offense rolling. Sell that. No, look, could you use 12 personnel? Sure. Would I use it a little bit more than they're doing now? Yes, but I'm taking your question to that kind of becomes more of one of their prominent things, and that I don't buy. No. I still think your number 3 receiver is probably better than what your number 2 tight end is playing right now. So I would sell that. Somebody just said he did say to run the ball in the end of the second quarter before the field goal try. I literally just said that, though. I said outside of the normal situations, third down, playing for a field goal, that's true for everybody. In those situations, those moments where it's late in a half, late in a quarter, time's running down, of course your head coach is going to have a say in those things. That's always true. I literally said that. And that's one of those times, hey, we just got the ball midfield. Hey, coach, can we take a shot here? That happens if no matter who your OC is and who your head coach is. Those conversations always happen. That's not meddling in the offense. That's communication between a head coach and an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator. It always happens. Happens at the NFL level, happens at the college level, happens everywhere. That's not what I'm talking about. That's normal. I think I left out a word, but just for fun is what I think that was supposed to be. Buy, sell, hold. Marcus Freeman will eventually be a top 10 coach in college football, just not at Notre Dame. I'm going to sell that just because I want to be optimistic. Joe Allen, 72, buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame moving from hamstring injuries to labrum injuries. Leonard and Benjamin Morrison is going to be the next criticism of the strength and conditioning program that people will fixate on. You're probably right. I mean, look, 2 injuries like that don't create a problem, just like, a couple hamstring injuries don't. What was the problem last year was it was happening everywhere. It was happening everywhere. Like and then a whole position group was ripped with that. And that was legitimate. Couple shoulder injuries doesn't create that, and I don't think you're saying that. But yeah, that's going to get a lot of people kind of fired up about, got to have somebody to blame, got to have a scapegoat. I'm much more upset that the strength coach apparently is the one that told the head coach to back off on the Thursday practice. And then he listened. 2 mistakes. Riker Ferg, buy, sell, hold. If Notre Dame struggles against Purdue and Miami of Ohio to a point where the program, if Notre Dame struggles against Purdue and Miami of Ohio to a point where the program under Marcus Freeman may not recover from. If they struggle, they'll recover from that. If they lose, that'll be tougher. If they lose either one of these next 2 games, I don't know that Marcus Freeman ever recovers from that. I don't care if they win ugly games. I mean, it'll bother me. I'll be critical of it, but you can recover from that. What you can't recover from are those losses. So I'll sell that. Buy, sell, hold. If Marcus Freeman doesn't embrace the rat poison mindset, we're in trouble for the future of the program under Marcus Freeman. I would agree with that. I'll buy that. I absolutely buy that. I think that's a big reason. And Marcus Freeman even said this in the postgame, in the Monday press conference, which just blew my mind. He's talking about how guys, in the press clipping, and guess what? So is he. He's jumping on all these podcasts, and not any Notre Dame media podcasts, but national podcasts, and talking about this, and buying into the hype, and his players are doing that, and it's like, hey man, why did you not know that was going on the week before? Rat poison is the comment for those who some people don't seem to know that. It's something that Nick Saban said about when people would tell his team how great it was, he would call it rat poison. Basically sounds good, but if you eat it, it'll kill you. Essentially, if you fall for it, it'll kill you. And Marcus Freeman needed to do a better job of making sure his team knew what was going on. And I mean, that's something that a guy like Jim Tressel would have done a better job with. It's something that Lou Holtz used to always kind of focus on. You got to prepare that. You got to handle that beforehand. You should have known that going in. It should have taken you 10 minutes of film session, which is all it took us to be like, this is a good veteran, well-coached football team. We're going to have to be ready for this football team. I mean, so your first meeting for game week should have been like, hey, fellas, here's the deal. And he didn't do that, apparently. Or if he did it, he didn't do it in a convincing way. Or you say it, you give him the words, but then you go out there and change your practice structure, which tells us, hey, We're not changing our practice structure if we were playing USC this weekend, if we were playing Louisville this weekend or A&M this weekend. So makes me think that you don't take this team seriously. So yes, I would agree. I would buy that. He's going to have to find his groove in games like this to say, hey, listen, when we're playing these type of teams, because again, last year Notre Dame blew out a lot of opponents, but most of those opponents weren't good. I mean, you outside of NC State, who they pulled away from late. But if you look at the teams they beat last year, Navy wasn't very good. Tennessee State wasn't very good. Central Michigan wasn't very good. Pitt wasn't very good. Wake Forest wasn't very good. Stanford wasn't very good. The only decent team you really beat last year bad was where it just controlled them from start to finish was USC. Duke was a good team, and you struggled with them. Northern Illinois was we said this all last week. They are a quality Group of 5 football team. Somebody even jumped in the chat saying I was like Lou Holtz. And then he sent me an email later saying, hey, I wasn't criticizing you for it. He thought it was a good thing. And guess what? Maybe that's what the Notre Dame players needed last week. Guys, this is a good football team. If you don't take them seriously, they can give you problems. But they didn't buy it, unfortunately. Salty Virginia Peanuts, buy, sell, hold. At least partially as a response to the issues in the NIU game, the Notre Dame offense will more closely resemble Mike Denbrock's recent offenses in the remainder of the season's games. I sure hope so. I'm going to buy because I want to be positive. I need to see it, but yeah, I want to see that. More movement, more aggressiveness, more speed coming off the line, more urgency, playing with more. I mean, it's almost kind of like LSU had a sense of urgency last year on offense because they had to score every time they touched the ball. They played with urgency. They played with speed. They played with focus because they had to. Maybe this team kind of got a little bit complacent because they have a great defense and they don't have that same urgency. And they could use a little of that. So I'm going to buy that just to be positive because it sounds good to me. I sure hope so. Oh, right. Buy, sell, hold from T-Bed 56. Buy, sell, hold. There are too many mouths to feed in the Notre Dame running back room right now. The focus should be placed on Love and Price with 5 to 10 plays a game with Ford. Personally, I feel like a running back rotation of more than 2 does not allow your playmakers to get into a groove and stay hot. I agree with the last part, but I sell the first part because I don't have any problem with Devin Ford having a role on this team, him or Aeneas Williams or Keedron Young. The issue that I have is that you need to know when to alter course on that. That's more of what my concern is. And when I look at this football team, I have no problem if on third down you want to get somebody in there to pass block. I don't need Jeremiah Love right now taking on blitzing linebackers. Would I do some things where I still have him on third down at times? That way teams know that, hey, we can go to this. Sure, because I think just the threat of having him on the field can maybe make teams get out of what they want to do, especially starts making more plays. But I'm totally fine playing through. And I usually played 3 running backs when I had coach running backs, and I had a kid who was an All-American that year. So I don't think that's the rotation as much as it is using them once you get in there. And that's more of the issue for me. I think Jadarian Price didn't play enough. I think that was a mistake. But I don't believe that you can't have 3 running backs playing. I think how you use those 3 running backs is more of the problem. And that's something that I would greatly push back on. Because like you said, kind of alluding to your number 3 and number 4 running back should not combine for more snaps than Jadarian Price. That's a problem. That's absolutely a problem. And somebody asked, is Price so bad at blocking that he can't be even on the it's not about that he's bad at it. It's just that other guys are good at it. I would actually, if you're going to go, I would actually put Aeneas Williams in there as my third down back because I think he presents more of a threat with the ball, and I don't think he's any worse of a pass blocker. That I would absolutely look at him instead. Buy, sell, hold, Rhino 1134. Steve Angeli will start at least 1 game in 2024. I buy that just because Riley Leonard's already got a shoulder injury, and look, I don't know how you have that kid play and not still be a running threat. So there's always that threat of him. So even if he plays this weekend, I still think that there's a good chance that Steve Angeli's going to have to start a game this year. I was hoping that wouldn't be the case, but he's already injured, so you have to kind of look at it. Connor G, buy, so hold. We see a quarterback at Notre Dame this season other than Riley Leonard take the field and take meaningful snaps, not just in garbage time. I put these two together for a reason because they're kind of the same question, but just in a different way. And so if I buy the first one that Steve Angeli will start at least one game, then I certainly have to buy that one as well, that somebody other than Riley Leonard will take the field and take meaningful snaps, not just in garbage time. So I buy that one as well. And I think we are getting close to the end. I got a few more than I thought we did. All right, so we're still rolling. We've got several more. Ben Tarnowski, buy, so hold. After the loss, we will see younger guys step up to be vocal and emotional leaders in the team, referring to Jordan Faison, Jeremiah Love, Drake Bowen, Adon Schuler, and Jaden Alsbury. I would be okay with that. I mean, if that's who they are and they're out there making plays, I'm okay. Look, if Jeremiah Love wants to get in front of the room and say, hey, we got to step up, we got to do something. Hey, man, you're the only guy on the offense right now making plays. Yeah, listen to him. And if some veteran's like, hey, man, sit down and shut up, you're just a sophomore. Well, hey, I'm a sophomore out here making plays. I'm playing hard. So, I'd be okay with that. It's got to be natural, though, right? Those guys have to have that mentality. They've got to be playing. They've got to be leaders already. They've got to be making plays. So yeah, I could see that, whether it's by example or stepping up. Yeah. But here's the thing. It can only be in a vacuum, meaning you don't have that right now. And one of them steps up, if it can't be a situation where if a captain's in front of the team room speaking, you jump up and start talking, right? Or if it's even in a meeting room, it's got to be natural, but I'm okay with that. Leaders should lead whenever. I mean, like, that's the thing is there's no, well, you're only this, so you can't lead. No, bullcrap. If you're out there playing and leading and you've got that personality, do it. Do it. I'm all for it. Ben Tarnowski also has this one. Buy, so hold. At the end of the season, we'll look back on the Northern Illinois game and say it was the most undisciplined the defense played. Golden will get them right. I'll absolutely buy that one. Because, again, it's about track record. Why am I more concerned about the Northern Illinois game from a Marcus Freeman standpoint, from an Al Golden standpoint? It's because of track record. We've seen this type of thing from Marcus Freeman more as the head coach. We haven't seen this as much from Al Golden's defense. So I'll buy that. Buy, so hold. Fran Brown will lead Syracuse to an 11-1 season and play for the ACC title. Look, they had a nice win this weekend over Georgia Tech, no doubt. I talked about that on Thursday or Friday as a potential upset game. They won by 3 at home. They still have to play Stanford. Should be a win. At UNLV, that will not be an easy game. At NC State, at Pitt, home against Virginia Tech, at BC, at Cal, home against UConn, home against Miami. Is an 11-1 season completely out of the realm of possibility? No. Do I expect it to happen? Absolutely not. I'd be shocked if they went 11-1. If Fran Brown leads Syracuse to an 8-4 season, he did a heck of a job. Heck of a job. No doubt. So I'm selling that one, but it'd be a fun story, though. It'd be a great story. Scotty G, buy, so hold. With the consultation of his experience and trusted staff, Coach Freeman will change his offensive philosophy before the end of September to open the offense and let the kids play to their strengths regardless of who the quarterback is. I hope so. It's a hopeful buy. And it's not so much opening up the offense as much as it's just being willing to be more aggressive. Chief Brody says, Bryan, my Michigan going 7-5 pick is looking pretty good, isn't it? Well, I had him at 8-4, 7-5, 8-4. So yeah, I would say so. But this is a game that I thought they'd lose to Texas, so I'm not surprised by that. But yeah, I'm going to buy that one, Scotty G, just out of hope. I hope he does. They need it to. Leon Hart, buy, so hold. Notre Dame finishing the season 11-1 after a spark from a QB change plays significantly different in the eyes of the College Football Playoff Committee, rather than finishing 11-1 with Riley Leonard when comparing Notre Dame's resume to 2-3 loss SEC and Big Ten teams. I reject that entirely. I'm selling the heck out of that. If Notre Dame's 11-1, Riley Leonard's your starter, he remains your starter all season, and you're 11-1, that is going to look much better in the eyes of the committee than you make a quarterback change and go 11-1 that way. Or at the very least, it's going to look the same. I think it would look probably Not as good, because if Riley Leonard's your quarterback, your offense probably gets better. At the very best, you can say it's a wash, because it's not an injury to your quarterback. It's your quarterback wasn't playing well, new guy comes in and he plays. So no, if they bounce back from this game and go 11-1 and win their next 10 games and beat Louisville, who's currently ranked in the top 20, beat USC, who's ranked outside the top 10, beat Florida State, beat Georgia Tech, they're going to be a playoff team, and I think they would probably be looked at just as well as they did the other. So Chief Brody says, I disagree. Remember that bump they got in 2018 when they switched to book? They didn't get a bump because they switched to book. They got a bump because they went 12-0. They would have not got a bump if they'd have gone. So what you'd have to say is they would have if Notre Dame goes 12-0 with Brandon Wimbush, they would have not been as viewed as highly as they were under Ian Book. So are you going to tell me that if Brandon Wimbush stayed the quarterback and Notre Dame went 12-0, that Notre Dame would have not been the 3 seed in the college football playoff? Is that what you're telling me? Because Notre Dame was the 3 seed, and the only team behind them was a team that had a loss in Oklahoma. So are you telling me that the committee would have had a 1-loss Oklahoma team over Notre Dame, a 12-0 Notre Dame team, if Brandon Wimbush was still the starting quarterback? Right? They never lost a game with Brandon Wimbush. Brandon Wimbush never lost a game in 2018. They were 3-0. They didn't lose with Brandon Wimbush. They didn't get a bump with Ian Book. They got a bump in play from Ian Book. Sure, you could say they played better, but the premise of this is not that if a quarterback comes in and they run the table, that they'll be a playoff team. Whereas if Riley Leonard stays, they're not going to be a playoff team because they won't win all their games. Sure. But the perception of Notre Dame will be stronger if your starting quarterback plays better and you win. You guys get this, right? They can't go 10-0 if Riley Leonard doesn't play better. If they go 10-0 down the stretch and Riley Leonard's your quarterback, it means he's playing better. The perception will always be better if your starter is playing well. And they'll look back at this game and say, if anything, it'll be this. Hey, new guy in a new system, dynamic quarterback in a new system. He was banged up. He missed all spring. Once he got right, that offense was pretty good, and they went 11-1. You're going to look better there than if you put your backup quarterback in the game and just out-talent your next 10 opponents. At the best you could argue is that it's a wash. In no scenario can you give me any evidence that a team makes that change and has the same record they would have had and they got a bump. And the 2018 example is a bad example because, again, they never lost with Brandon Wimbush, number one. And number two, you can't convince me that they would have been ranked lower if Brandon Wimbush stayed the quarterback and they went 12-0. Explain to me how they would have been ranked higher or lower if Brandon Wimbush stayed the quarterback and they went undefeated. That makes no sense. No sense. They got better when you put Ian Book in the game, and that led to them going undefeated. But the question is not if they're both quarterbacks lead them to 11-1, are they going to be considered better with the backup coming in the game than with the starter? That makes no sense. No sense. So I'm selling that. Bracketed cover 3. Buy so hold. Purdue is going to stack the box and have their corners play man-to-man all game long, even with their best corner injured out. I don't know about stack the box because I think that's kind of already what they do. So I don't know that I would. I mean, I kind of buy that. Yeah, I'll buy that just because that's kind of already what they do. That's kind of what they do. Bracketed cover 3. The buy so hold. The SEC does have 4 of the 5 best teams in the country. I'll sell that. Right now. I don't know that we definitely know who the best teams in the country are right now. I think we think we know, but we really don't know. I would say for sure that the SEC has 3 of the best teams in the country, and Georgia, Texas, and you could either make a case for Bama, Ole Miss, or Missouri, but like Bama didn't look like the world on fire this weekend. I mean, Ole Miss They haven't played anybody. Missouri hasn't played anybody. Tennessee hasn't played anybody. I beat NC State. That's a good win. You could maybe argue that. But, I mean, you talk about who they beat. I mean, right now we're still basically ranking teams based off preseason perception. Well, why is Miami not considered that? They've got a talented roster. They blew out their opponent this weekend by 47. They beat an SEC team on the road by 24. Why isn't USC considered a top 5 team right now? Right? They blew out Utah State this weekend, 48-0. They played a number 13 team in the country and beat them, an SEC team. So right now, everything is still based off our perception coming into the season. If we were going off of what you've done this season, then USC is not outside the top 10. USC is only outside the top 10 because they were ranked outside the top 20 when the season started. USC held Utah State to 191 yards of offense, and they had over 500. They also blew out in week one. They blew them out, and also week one beat what people consider to be a really good LSU team. So I don't know that we know who the top 5 teams are. They certainly have the top 4 of the 5 ranked teams. I mean, that's the polls. They have 6 of the top 7 teams. I just don't agree with that. That's where they are. That's the perception of, the SEC is great and everybody else sucks because the SEC is beating up on a bunch of bad teams. Go SEC. Buy, sell, hold. Should Steve Angeli play, the sack against number will go up substantially, unless the offensive line plays better. Sure. I mean, Riley Leonard's got them out of some bad situations. There's no doubt about that. Darvis, buy, sell, hold. Coach Freeman is going to finally show a dynamic offense rest of the season starting this Saturday. I'm going to buy that out of hope. Look, as an analyst, I have to see it, right? I have to see it. I mean, you don't often see teams go from absolute train wreck the first 2 weeks to just lighting the world on fire that very next week. Doesn't happen often. I need to see it. So analyst-wise, sell. Hopeful fan-wise, I'm going to buy because it's possible they have the talent. I just have to see it. But I want to be optimistic going in this game, so I'm going to buy it. Buy, so hold. The offense continues showing a lack of receiving yards, mostly at receiver. Recruiting a game-changing receiver will be difficult. Sure, if that's the case, then buy. If the premise you initially said is true, then the second part will be true also. So it'd be a buy. Got a super chat from Bill Shepard. Thank you, Bill. Buy, sell, hold. Northern Illinois stays ranked, goes undefeated, wins the MAC, and makes the playoff as a 12 seed, making this loss, although ugly as heck, not as detrimental as a whole. Okay, so if that happens and they go undefeated and win the rest of their games, and so that would mean they would have to then let's go to their schedule. They'd have to beat Buffalo this weekend. They'd go on the road and beat NC State next weekend. Or no, they go to Buffalo next weekend because they got to bye this weekend. End of September, they go to NC State, beat NC State, beat UMass at home, at Bowling Green, Toledo at home, at Ball State, at Western, home against Akron, at Miami of Ohio, Central Michigan, and then a rematch with somebody, most likely, in the MAC game. So they'd have 2 road wins over Power 5 teams that were ranked to start the season. They would be a playoff team in that scenario, certainly. And it would make the loss look not as bad, but it's still bad. I don't care how good a MAC team is. They should never beat Notre Dame. Ever. So, but in your scenario, Bill, does it take some of the sting off from a college football playoff resume standpoint? Certainly does. Here'd be the interesting thing. It's like if Notre Dame runs the table and Northern Illinois is undefeated and makes the playoff, how do you justify having them ranked behind Notre Dame? I mean, what you're going to hear is, well, the overall record is better. A resume for Notre Dame is better. Notre Dame had more good wins than Northern Illinois. They played a tougher schedule week to week. Okay, that's fine. But they beat Notre Dame. They beat NC State on the road. So that would be fascinating. I don't see Northern Illinois going undefeated, however. But again, guys, I don't care. I don't care if they beat NC State. I don't care if they go 12, 13, and they would actually be 13-0. Don't. It's still a bad loss. But to your point, Bill, from a playoff committee standpoint, it would look much better at that point in time. Good stuff. Thank you for the super chat, Bill. I really appreciate that, man. Okay. All right. Let's go to John A1. Buy us a hold. Northern Illinois will win the MAC. I'll buy it because I think they have a shot. I said this last week. I said Northern Illinois, Miami, and Toledo, in my opinion, were the three best teams in the MAC. So they have a shot. It's going to be how does his Coach Hammock's team handle this win? Do they stay locked in? Do they kind of start feeling good about themselves, or do they stay humble and stay hungry? That was a hungry football team that came into Notre Dame Stadium. Do they stay that way? If they do, yeah, they got a shot. They got a very good defense. They're incredibly experienced. Somebody in the chat put up something about how they had like high number of players with 40 career starts. We talked about this last week. We talked about how experienced this team was, how veteran this team was, and it wasn't a bunch of veteran portal guys. It was a bunch of their guys, meaning they'd been in that system forever. And that helped them. And that's going to help them in the MAC. I said last week, this is one of the best teams in the MAC. It still shouldn't beat Notre Dame. But, yeah, they're a very experienced team, and they have talent. And we also they got a couple NFL players on their team, too. John A1 says, buy so hold. The Notre Dame offense we expected will be on display game 6-12 in 2024. I'll buy that. I think 6-12 gives me greater confidence that they'll get it right by then than starting now the rest of the season. Like I think the more likely thing is that they kind of they play better this weekend, and they play better against Miami of Ohio, and then better against Louisville, and then kind of break out the second half of the year. I think that's a little bit more likely than this weekend they go out and hang 40 plus on Purdue and then just roll. I would love if that happened. But if I'm being practical or going off of how it normally goes, I would say it would most likely take some time to get to that point in time. Get better, but don't become what you're supposed to be until second half of the year, which is what John points to. So I'll buy that. Somebody says Marcus Freeman has never lost 2 games in a row before. Yes, he has. He literally lost his first 3 games as a head coach, and he literally lost the first 2 games of the 2022 season. So he has lost 2 games in a row before. Just so we're clear on that. Buy so hold from BA5083. Marcus Freeman has too many voices in his ear and is confused on what to trust or how to coach. I'm gonna push back on the confused part, but as far as too many voices in his ear, that I buy. That Marcus Freeman needs to do more dictating and less being dictated to. And I'm not talking about from assistant coaches. I'm talking about from strength program. I'm talking about from people in the athletic director. There's all these type of things where I think he's being dictated to, and he needs to do more dictating. Some of it he likes to do. So all this going around and shaking hands and kissing babies and all that kind of stuff. Then sure. But I mean, he's got to put his foot down and say, hey, look, I got to do a little less of that stuff. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I don't like the confused part, but the rest of it I buy. AST 12321. Northern Illinois, buy so hold. Northern Illinois will be viewed as a head-scratching anomaly after the next 4 games. I sure hope so, dude. If it's not, this is going to be a long year. I really hope I'm buying this because it needs to be true, because this is going to be a miserable month if it's not. So yeah, I'll buy that. Buy so hold from Tommy Guns 44. More than an 11.5 called pass plays where at least half of the routes on those plays are any variation of stops, hitches, comebacks, etc. Well, I'm going to buy that because the comebacks and stops are a big part of what Notre Dame does. I mean, they run a lot of 4 verts, and if you bail on a 4 vert, if you play off against a 4 vert, you're going to either run a stop or a comeback. I mean, that's I'm okay with that. Their best pass concept that Mike Denbrock crushed people with in 2023 or at LSU had a hitch and a quick option route, like you're referring to, as part of that read. There's nothing wrong with those things. There's nothing wrong with those concepts. It's just, and I'm okay running more than an 11.5 where a bunch of those routes are that way. It's you just have to mix it up with some other things. You've got to give them some, if you're going to give them, 12 horizontal stretch type plays or those, you got to give them some other stuff that puts different pressures on their coverage structure. Because right now it's easier to defend what they're doing because everything attacks you in a similar fashion. A horizontal stretch is that they're running attacks you in a similar fashion. And you're not running enough counter concepts that, okay, if you're going to play us this way to stop this, you're playing coverage this way to stop our slot fade. So then we're going to have some stuff to come at you with and to hurt you with. That's more of what it needs to be. Chris Y. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame versus Purdue will be the catalyst to make a change in Freeman's offensive philosophy, not the loss to Northern Illinois. I'm going to sell that because if Northern Illinois doesn't do it, then I don't know that anything will do it, to be completely honest with you. I mean, if he doesn't get to that by now, I just don't think it happens. So I'm going to sell it because I think if it's going to change, it will have already changed. And again, it's not about offensive philosophy as much as, I mean, it is, but it's just about the mentality that you're creating in the room. That's more of where it comes from for me. So that's my slight pushback on that. So that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. Thank you guys so much for being with me today. I know it got off to a bit of a rough start, but we got rolling and hopefully it was a good show and you guys enjoyed yourselves. So that's going to do it for today's show, everybody. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this podcast, give us a 5-star review. We'd greatly appreciate that. And if you've not done so, come join us at the message board at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Be back tomorrow, 1 o'clock for our prediction show and our keys to victory. Then Bill Bender and I will preview this week's games. There's a couple interesting games and not a great docket after the way that some of the games went this weekend, but we'll still be here. And then, of course, Friday, I'll be here for the mailbag. I'm not heading over to Purdue till Saturday morning, so we will be here for a full mailbag on Friday. So I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day. And 12 minutes, IB Nation Sports Talk gets started, so be there for that. And then I'll see you guys again on tomorrow, 1 o'clock. Be ready. Me, Ryan, Trevor, and then Bill Bender. We'll preview Notre Dame and Purdue. We'll make our predictions. And then, of course, we're going to definitely talk about some games. We're going to talk about that Kansas State-Arizona game. I'm very much looking forward to that. So have a great rest of your day, everybody. And I'll talk to you guys again soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.